9:16. Welcome back to the morning show with Jeff and Will. It's AM 1700 WRCR, Haverstraw, WRCR.com. We welcome in at this time as we do every Monday morning. It is Tina Traster. She heads up rcbizjournal.com. That's the Rockland County Business Journal online. Welcome, Tina. How are you?
Okay, having a little trouble hearing you.
Can you? Is this any better? Do you hear me better now?
Okay, that's 100% better.
100%. That's a lot.
That is a lot.
It is.
That's a lot.
So how you doing?
Good. I'm okay. Good morning. I hope everybody had good holidays, whatever you were celebrating or whatever time you got to squirrel away with friends and family. So that is first of all. Every month, you know, we are putting up something called the Price Tracker, which is giving people an opportunity to actually track the prices in the country on various commodities. We started from January 24, and right now we have the most recent data in from March of 2025. So in summary, here's what we know, in case you're interested in tracking prices. Eggs continued their climb, reaching 6.227 per dozen. Some commodities remain flat, such as, let me see, I think like oranges, tomatoes. There were some seasonal adjustments for agricultural production where prices were pretty steady. Aside from eggs, beef continued to climb as well, as did electricity. That one hurts. That one hurts everybody. The national unemployment metric we saw came in at 4.2% in March. That is up from 4% in January, and that comes from the Federal Reserve, if anybody was wondering. Most of the other data comes from the Bureau of Labor Statistics and other government databases. So the impact on tariffs or threatened tariffs will likely affect prices in April, and we will keep you apprised on those numbers. Switching gears, we put out a story, I guess it was the week before last, and it was a story that got so much, play and discussion and input that I wanted to talk about it. And this is an ongoing problem in Clarkstown and I guess the county at large, and that is the how investor landlords basically take single-family homes and convert them to illegal boarding homes or houses, or some sort of a situation where it is very, very clear that it is not a single-family home, that it is no longer being used as a single-family home. And, the story came to us because we've covered this before, and we had somebody contact us and describe a situation that, where they're living next door to a house where all the classic signs, 10 cars in the driveway, exploding garbage, the sort of traffic that comes and goes, the noise, just all the clear signs that is not a single-family home, a single-family, related single-family, which is what the law is in Clarkstown, living in a home. That these homes. In this particular case, there are 3 entrances to this home. In this particular case, I didn't know this when the tip came in, but it turns out this is one of the homes that was already in the crosshairs of the town of Clarkstown. You may remember back in June when Supervisor Holman and Ed Day and Mike Lawler held a press conference to announce a crackdown on 2 landlords in particular. And one of these landlords was Simca Schwartz, and the other was William Bermeo. And between them, they owned 17 basically illegally rented houses. And, the process dragged through the courts. And, in fact, it went, in the case of these 2, it went from town court up to Rockland County Supreme when Clarkstown sought emergency relief against the owners, asking for immediate access and restraining order against further occupancy and so on and so forth. And then in December, and this is the inside baseball. This gives you the kind of insight, I think, as to one reason why this is a perpetuating problem that just seems to have no end. So back in December, the town, this never, ran all the way through the courts. Instead, the town struck a deal with both of these landlords, and neither one of them had to pay a fine, but they were both ordered permanently to refrain from, using, maintaining, allowing, permitting, or otherwise acquiescing in the use and occupancy of the houses that were cited in the legal proceedings. Basically, in English, they were not supposed to be allowed to use these homes anymore for anything other than a single-family residence. And under these agreements, they were certainly barred from using them for multifamily, or dormitory style, or boarding house. And the stipulation also gave the town the ability to inspect the houses at any time for compliance. But as I said, the tip that we got from neighbors is that, all these months later, they still have to put up with what is essentially a house that's being exploited beyond its single-family use. And I think the problem here is that what we see is a greater pattern, and it was, as I said, there was so much feedback on this story, and I wasn't surprised by any of it. But it's kind of like, first of all, in this case, there were not even any fines. But even the inconvenience, I suppose, of having to go to court, and maybe they hire lawyers, maybe they don't. I think that, this is just the price of doing business. They take these houses that tend to be worn down, and they just let them deteriorate while they crowd them. The typical, I think, construction here is that a contractor, let's say a painting company, or a or a plumbing company, they'll rent out the house from somebody like Simca Schwartz, and then those people will populate the houses with workers, and so it's this kind of like transient population that comes and goes inside of a house. And the truth is that it's very disturbing and very jarring if if in your greatest investment, presumably, which is your house, you have to live next door to that. This, like I said, I saw the way the story played out, and that this is not specific to Clarkstown. It's really going on all over the county. And yes, we could talk about the lack of affordable housing, which is the common refrain that we talk about all the time. And in fact, this Friday, Rockland County is holding its third annual housing forum, and the county has made some recent efforts to try to deal with this problem in terms of some grants going to affordable housing developers. But the sheer numbers of the number of units is small and still needs to be built. And in the meantime, we have a situation where single-family homes are just simply exploited and not used that way. And I don't know, it's very jarring for people who have to live around it. So, the other possibility, I suppose, is that just better enforcement, larger, towns seem to have no problem with sending and hiring. Well, maybe the code enforcement officer is where there's the most, building inspectors and code enforcement officers. I think that's where the priority needs to be, based on this ongoing problem that has, many people seem very upset about this. So check that story out. I think it's very relevant, and it certainly is a problem in need of a solution. And finally, I have a couple minutes left. So unless any thoughts, questions, comments, feedback?
Nope, go right ahead.
Okay. So the other thing that we published last week is, we've been talking about the Knights of Columbus building, and there was the sort of the long saga of waiting for to see whether the Attorney General's office was going to approve of what was going to be a donation of the Knights of Columbus building to the town of Haverstraw. And it was fraught with all sorts of problems and had all kinds of detractors, and several entities were alerting the Attorney General's office to the problematic nature of that transaction. Then suddenly, out of nowhere, the transaction was called off, and then a new kind of ploy was devised for the town to now lease the building for 25 years, with the Knights having basically no control over it whatsoever. So once again, an organization called the Freedom from Religion Foundation, which is a national organization of advocates and attorneys, they had weighed in before, basically telling the town of Haverstraw that its plan violates the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment, basically which prohibits government from funding religious practices. And they have come back to the town once again to say, this new scheme basically amounts to the same thing. And they wrote in a letter, and we've excerpted portions of the letter, that the town really needs to disentangle itself from the Knights and its building at 56 West Broad Street in the village of Haverstraw. And it says, quote, government funds cannot be given away to religious organizations in order to benefit their religious mission. We ask once again that the town cease providing taxpayer funds to support this religious organization and cease any ongoing entanglement with the Knights. You may remember from previous stories, and I've talked about it on this show, is that the town of Haverstraw shelled out about $120,000 of taxpayer money to the Knights over the course of 2024, and it's just the Freedom from Religion Foundation is just basically saying what others have said, which is just a flagrant violation of the separation of church and state. This is the latest letter. It's my understanding that once again the town of Haverstraw, in an attempt to now quote unquote lease this building, is once again going to need the approval of the Attorney General's office. So it will be interesting to see how this plays out. We're monitoring this because it's an important issue, and it might set a precedent that we need to pay attention to here in this county.
Much appreciated, as always. Tina Traster of the Rockland County Business Journal. You can find that at rcbizjournal.com. Sign up for e-newsletters, get some other information there as well. Thank you, Tina. Have yourself a great week.
You too.